Welcome back to it, my friends, live in the North Hollywood hideout in Los Angeles, California. This is Front of House, the greatest damn stereo music podcast you have ever heard in your life, possibly the only stereo music podcast you've heard. Let's hope things are catching on. Today, part 2 of our interview with M, the Heir Apparent. We'll hear some more live songs, and in a couple of minutes, we'll also hear the latest track produced by M. He's releasing a lot of singles lately, so I'll direct you where you can pick that up. Patreon subscribers to Front of House receive mastered MP3s every single week, featuring the artists that we have on Front of House. You can keep those in your music collection, and it costs as low as $3 a month. $3 a month for at least 4 songs a month. That's less money than they're charging you at Apple. And it's music you can't get anywhere else except for here on Front of House. So go to patreon.com/Front of House. This season of Front of House is dedicated to our dear, dear friend, Jenny Pagliaro, half of the band Roses and Cigarettes. So every single show, we're going to be playing a brand new track from the record Echoes and Silence, a stellar piece of work from the band Roses and Cigarettes. Man, when I got this CD... And yes, some bands are still making CDs. I recommend it. There's something about liner notes. There's something about being able to read what's on the artist's mind when they are wrapping up a CD. So, yeah, CDs are great. Anyway, when I got this CD, I had it in my truck, and I listened through a couple of times, and then I texted Jenny and Angela and was like, what the hell did you guys do? The production quality, the songwriting has made it one of my favorite records of 2019. Nay, one of my favorite records of all time. So it did not leave my CD player for 4 months. It's the only record I listened to every time I was driving. It was the only thing I listened to every time I was driving for 4 months. This record from Roses and Cigarettes called Echoes and Silence, man, it is a killer. I'm going through it track by track every single week here on Front of House and breaking out a new track for you from Roses and Cigarettes, the album Echoes and Silence. We're up to track number 2, and track number 2 is the title track, Echoes and Silence. Now, if you don't believe me when I'm talking about the dark arts in production, just crank this up, sink into your headphones, Echoes and Silence, Front of House.
Sun sitting back clouds. Oh, things changing now. Once was a light turned out somehow. Once was a light turned out somehow. Once was a light. Control.
Echoes and silence all around. Man, that song gives me chills. That's Roses and Cigarettes, Front of House. Again, the title track from Echoes and Silence, available now everywhere you buy CDs, but go to rosesandcigarettes.com and get it there, my friends, so the artists get to keep the bulk of the dough. This season of Front of House, again, dedicated to our dear friend Jenny Pagliaro. Jenny, we love you. We miss you. Say hi to Levon Helm. Front of House is made possible by our great sponsors like Rode Microphones. Visit rode.com for all your microphone needs. Part 2 of our interview with M, the Heir Apparent, is forthcoming. Before that, we'll play you a recent produced track from M. He's releasing a brand new song every single month as a single. And to purchase those songs, you can go to thisismxoxo.com. I guess it's like kisses and hugs. Yeah, thisismxoxo.com. We'll jump back in with M live in the North Hollywood hideout right after this one. M, the Heir Apparent, Falling in Love, Front of House.
Just before we met, I was as low as you can get. It's like your love's the light that I have longed to see. But once I let you in, I've got to learn that in the end you're not the one that I built you up to be. If it helps you take to heart the words of those who say that love is hell, 'cause I am bitter from defeat. Take it or leave it. Am I falling in love too early? Say I'm falling in love. Ooh. Why should we pretend if we are speeding towards the end? To me, it's not the life that I intend to lead. 'Cause after we commit, it will be harder to admit if it is every bit as bad as I believe. If it helps you take to heart the words of those who say that love is hell, 'cause I am bitter from defeat. Take it or leave it. Am I falling in love too early? Say I'm falling in love. Can I promise and know I'll be honest when the day for honesty comes? Ooh. Hard to believe I would ever, hard to believe I could ever be all this waiting forever, falling for you. Am I falling in love too early? Say I'm falling in love. Can I promise and know I'll be honest when the day for honesty comes?
What's the first thing you do after you leave the stage to glorious applause? I'm sure there's a few bows, maybe a couple screens for an encore, but you're a respectful artist. You don't take
Right.
that.
I don't go over my allotted time.
Right.
I leave them wanting more, and
So
and let me take the
uproarious
stage.
aplum
Right.
from
Right.
the
Roses
from
being
the paid
cast
audience.
at me, and
Right. Right. Panties on the stage.
Sometimes
Uh-huh.
ladies' underwear and men. what I immediately do is run my main guitar off, and then I run back on stage and grab my tuning pedal and my cables and my backup guitar, and then I'll usually run to the dressing room and drop everything off and sprint as fast as I can over to the merch table.
Right.
Because I tell everyone, I say, I'm going to be at that merch table in 5 minutes. Come say hello. You don't have to buy anything to say hello. And but that's really one of the chances that people have to not only meet me but also for me to sell merch. And so that 30 minutes or so between my set and Matt's is me hopefully meeting a lot of people and selling them CDs and getting them to sign up for the mailing list and shaking hands and taking photos of people. And then
that's the big thing for especially unknown artists is don't go hide away in your dressing room. You need to be amongst the people. I
really feel that way. I mean, I have a friend named Pat Hull who I mean he's when you do something creative, everyone's nice and you make a lot of friends. And I think a lot of people are surprised. You're always told everyone's gets cutthroat, and that's not really my experience. I find people are genuinely great and everyone's trying to make it, and to the extent that they're able to and willing to support each other. But there's only a few people who you really feel like creatively like endeared to, and you really feel like that person is not only, I feel like we're like kindred creative spirits, like it hurts. They're so good. And one of them is this guy, Pat Hull, Pathull. And actually, it was three of us played this. I had this show in Mountain View, California, at Red Rock Coffee in Mountain View, and so
that's where Shoreline Amphitheater is.
Yeah, same town. Yeah, same town. It's on Castro Street.
That's a smaller stage.
Yes, Red Rock Coffee, not Red Rock, Morrison, Colorado. But I would take songwriters down there, and one time I took Pat and I took our other buddy Kevin, who performs as field medic. He's doing phenomenal as well. People should check him out. But we were having this talk, which is they noticed because I would just stand by the door as people were leaving and say goodbye to everybody, and they both noted like, oh, you're really good at like meeting people. For me, it's like the most important aspect, But I had a talk with my buddy Pat, who said like for him, it's enough just to sort of show up and present the gift. He's very he's like a sage when it comes to things, and what he gets out, he's in it for very different reasons, And part of me wanting to do that is, I have sort of a business mind about it too, and so. I sort of see the practical benefit of meeting people. But also, it's the only thing that feels real to me. Like, the performances are fun, it's great, but it's so small. It's such a small window of time. And when I look back, even on this tour, but every show I've ever played, it's not the time on stage that really sticks with me. It's the moment afterward where I meet someone, or it's, a lot of people say nice things, but you do get people who really reach out to you and want to connect and let you know that for whatever reason, whatever you're making is like speaking to them.
Well, it's certainly one of the building blocks you need to be a career musician, right, is to be out there meeting people. But you bring up an interesting point. Your friend Pat Hull is not into it for the meeting of people, whatever. He has his own reasons for being into it. What are your reasons? What's your driving reason for playing music, for being there up on stage, for continuing to write? Why do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it's probably something that's in common with a lot of people, and I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it is the case. I think on some level, most creative people who stick with it as long as I have, who it's not just a hobby, but like who really pursue it, I think there's sometimes, a void, for lack of a better word, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but I think people who are driven to perform and create and be observed and sort of celebrated to the extent, not always consciously, but I think like people like myself and all of my peers who don't stop. I've known a lot of people who do this and have all stopped. I think for a lot of us who keep going, it's because this is sort of what we need, whether it was how we were raised or what we didn't get or what we got too much of or whatever it was. We have this need to sort of like we only feel alive when we're being sort of celebrated in a way or when we're entertaining people.
So it's nourishment.
Yeah, it's sort of psycho-spiritual nourishment. There's this thing that whatever that hole needs to be filled with. Some people it's drugs, some people it's sex, some people it's food. I think for people like myself, it's sort of we want to create. I think it has to do with, especially if you're an artist, you like in some ways you feel like you're expressing your truest parts of yourself through your music, and so
sure,
there's a part where you feel like nothing else can make me feel fully seen unless my creative work is being celebrated, because that's who I feel like I really am. Like people can be nice to me in my personal life, but they don't see like the real me. And if people like celebrated my creative work, then I would feel whole. And I'm not saying it ever works out that way in actual practice, but I think that's like the driving mechanism on some level is to fill a void of something.
It's a solid answer. What would you do if you weren't playing music or any art, doing any art at all?
Do you mean like practically, or
what
if I
would
had
you
my
do
choice?
practically for take art and music completely out of the picture? And you have to have some kind of trade. You have to make a living somehow. But you can choose.
Yeah.
You can say I would be a doctor, and I'd say great, that'd be a fine answer. But what would you do if music and art could not be a part of it?
It's so hard. I mean, just as my life is now, like not married, not having kids. I mean, I'm not saying I'd be happy, but I'd probably still be working in restaurants. I mean, I did that for a decade. And even though it really was challenging in a lot of ways, it also gave me a lot of time to make my creative work. So idealistically, I mean, I would have a job that just sort of paid the bills and would give me the space and time to just, still do what I feel like is my life's work. That's an entirely different question. I mean, like I said, I have a girlfriend now, and who knows what the future holds. But, as I get older, I'm, turning 34 soon, marriage.
Old man, dude. Look at
It's funny. I mean, I think you're a little bit older than I am, but I feel like it's
Decade.
crazy when you turn into that age where you start calling everyone, "Oh, he's a good kid," and he's like 20 in his early 20s.
Right.
It just starts happening because
Yeah,
that's how you literally see people.
Right.
And I do have a job. I don't mean to be secretive about it. I probably shouldn't talk about it, but I do. Well, I'll just say I do some crisis line counseling, but I work with a lot of like younger people who are going to school for like mental health, and they want to be therapists or psychologists. And it's like I'm working with a lot of like 19-year-olds, and like they don't even know a pre 9/11 world. It's like I'm finally dealing with kids who have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'm an old man to them. And I think the only thing I mean by all of this is, when you're younger, you think people stop doing this because they give up. But the truth is, life is long, and you have no idea what you're going to want when you're in your early 30s. And I'm starting to think about things I never thought I'd ever think about. I'm starting to maybe consider that certain things could make me happy. Like maybe just being married and having kids, like could genuinely like that void that I think creativity is going to fill. I think a lot of people as they get older, they wisen up and they realize, oh yeah, actually that thing is not going to, it's never going to be filled by music, because every win or goal, every box you tick, I want to do that, that's going to make me happy. It never does. Once I get this many likes on my Facebook page, once I get this many streams on Spotify, once I can play that venue or go on tour with that artist, like that's gonna satiate me. It never does. It's like I say, it's sort of like lights in a fog. You can only see 10 feet in front of you, and no matter how far you go, you just see that much further.
Right.
You never arrive. And I think the only thing that's ever, this is where I go back to why it's so important for me to meet people, is because the only thing that has felt real is connecting with people and shaking their hands and that one moment. That's the only thing that feels human, because the performance part is fine, but it's also, there's a weird sort of power thing going on there where I think they're seeing the real me, but that's not the real me. That's not the real me upstage. My name is the Heir Apparent. Like that's not, that's not the real me. The real me is the person between the shows when I'm with my girlfriend in the car, or even before I come to this podcast, playing chess on my iPad, and it's the person who wants to be around for those moments who kind of fills that void that I think a lot of people are trying to fill with celebrity and being celebrated and that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm grateful you have music to fill that void, and I'm very, very grateful that you're playing for us here today. And the Heir Apparent is our guest. Front of House is the podcast. It's in stereo. Crank it up. Let's hear another song.
Okay. So I've been releasing a lot of music online. I have 2 EPs. One came out in 2016. It's called Be Free. The second one came out the next year. It's called Save Yourself. And since then, I've just been releasing a ton of music online. And this year, I'm just going to be releasing a bunch of new original music. And this was the first single of the year. It's called Time of War. Give me one reason to stay here. Why not just say it? I've been thinking no one can save us no more. I think I might even just lay here, hide out and wait for someone braver, 'cause I can't face anymore.
live it up. I wanna make this life worth living, but see the world crumbling down and give it up. Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. Our leaders are the criminals at large. We're living in. We're living in. I'm burning out here in this hate. Tired of all this blaming others, certain it's only making me numb. I'm giving too little too late, fighting all the same corruption, certain destruction saving me from. Live it up. Wanna make this life worth living, but see the world crumbling down and give it up. Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. Our leaders are the criminals at large. We're living in. We're living in. Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. We're angry and we're shaking at the bars. We're living in. We're living in. Can't believe that we thought it would last forever. I can see where we're starting to crack. Hey. We're falling, 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 divided by fear and on the attack. Now more than ever, ever, ever before. We're living in. Cause we are living in a time of war. Someone police, no one's in charge. Our leaders are the criminals at large. We're living in. We're living in. Cause we are living in a time of war. No one believes a word of ours. We're angry and we're shaking at the bars. We're living in. We're living in. Hey, hey. We're living in.
We are front of house with the Heir Apparent here at the North Hollywood Hideout. I love your finger picking style, by the way. Let's talk about the tools of the trade for a minute. Introduce me to your guitar.
This is a guitar from a company called The Loar, Loar. And I'm really a fan of small body acoustics, Gibson, sort of LGs. I have like a 60s LGO. But this is sort of a real cheap sort of imitation of sort of the Gibson small body acoustic guitars. And it's real cheap. I found this one on eBay for like $250.
Really?
I normally play, it's called a LO16, which is the earlier version of this model that actually, I was going to say Towns Van Sant, but it's, he has a similar name. What's his name? Towns Van, I don't know. Anyway, he's a newer songwriter. He's I think he's endorsed by
Justin Towns Earl?
Yes, exactly. Which ironically,
JTE.
Yeah, the tour manager for this tour that we're on has managed for him as well.
I love Justin Towns Earl.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Okay.
And he plays like, and I probably used it on the last podcast we did, but it's this guitar with like a shinier body. And when I started this, that had been my main guitar for, maybe like the last like 8 years or so. But it was sort of beat up. It wasn't holding its tuning very well, so I knew for these shows I had to get a new one. And so I got this newer one. It's not the LO16. I think they call it the LO14. But I got on eBay for like $250, sent it out, and it works with my whole zeitgeist. I have a black and white theme going. So it's, I'm not really like a gear nerd. I don't know a lot about guitars. A lot of people after shows will talk to me. They're like, "What gauge strings do you have?" And I'm like, I don't know, and I don't think about it. But anyway, so
I have my drummer restring my guitar. I don't even know what's on there.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, I do know what they are, but it's.
Right.
I think it's that thing like when you're, I think some people get sort of mired in the tools of the trade, and they're. I think when you're like really creating, like that's not really what you're thinking about. I feel like you should sort of look at things like Questlove, the drummer from the Roots, which is like, if that dude sat down in any drum set, he would make it rock.
Absolutely.
It's not about what ply shells he has or what heads he's using or even what stick gauge he has or what cymbals. Like he's just going to sit down and hear what he's having and he can just conjure something out of it, I feel like that's like the approach you should take. And I don't know why I'm getting all prescriptive, but I feel like anyone who's wondering, like, oh, I gotta wait till I get that guitar before I write that song or record that record. It's like you should work. Like, there's a quote I'm gonna butcher, but I think people can find it based on what I say, which is, start now, use what you have, do what you can, sort of something like that. Which is
That's a bumper sticker right there.
Yeah,
Those are words to live by.
I'm sure it is, but it's one of those things, which is like you have everything you need. You don't need to buy that typewriter before you sit down and write that great American novel. Like, there was this interview with, the writer David Foster Wallace.
No, not familiar.
He wrote Infinite Jest. He's not living anymore, but he hated Q&As because people would ask him questions that he thought he understood why they were asking, but he thought it was not a meaningful question. He understood their interest, but he wanted them to ask different questions. He felt like people were never asking the right questions. They would say, like, "What's your writing process?" And he's like, he would be, "I could tell you, but it's not going to help you." He was like, "I do 2 drafts by hand, then I type it up, then I revise on that, then I write it again by hand." Or he had this very sort of abstract process that people thought, "Oh, maybe I have to do it that way." But his whole reasoning was, that's just how I do it. I never thought about it. That's just how I do it. And so what I took out of that is, don't try to aspire to things. Just do more of what you already do. If what you are already doing is sort of writing things by hand, just keep writing by hand. There's probably something about that is integral to like your original voice. So if you have some shitty guitar that your dad gave you that doesn't hold its tuning, but you've been playing on it for 10 years, you should record your record with that.
Right.
Because you're going to sound strange if I give you like a nice Martin Dreadnought guitar. It's just not it's not gonna be your voice, And especially now in an era where people can everyone can create and record and make music. Just use what you have. It's one of your only chances of sounding like yourself.
Now, are you writing every day?
No, I used to when I was, first starting out. I mean, I was really sort of, and not that I held to it all the time, but that was sort of the standard that I held myself to, was if I wasn't writing every day, I couldn't call myself a songwriter. And that was really, I'm really glad that I did that because it sort of taught me discipline. But I'm actually sort of transitioned into a spot now where I sort of go through seasons of writing, and I try to be okay with that. That there's times where I'm sort of soaking things up, and then there's times where I really have songs to write.
Okay.
And I always, when I do write, when I decide, I'm going to write this song now, then I do it meticulously. Then I'm writing every day until that song is finished. And I always have plans. I mean, always have I don't ever not really finish things. I sort of finish a song and then I move on. And I always have a row of songs that I'm planning to get to. Once this is done, I'll get to that. And other things get slotted in. But it's like if I wanted to write every day, I certainly could. I have enough nuggets of songs to do that. But I've actually found over time it actually doesn't do a lot for my songwriting. That doesn't make the songs any better. And it's actually better for me. Like, I sort of look at songs now as like books on my shelf, which is, we all have like 1 or 2 books that we picked up 100 times that we were always intending to read, like The Count of Monte Cristo or something, but we've always gotten like 10 pages into it.
Sure.
But when we finally pick it up and sit down to read it, we go, oh, I'm supposed to be reading it right now.
Right.
Like, there's something in it that's super germane to your life at this moment. And I've sort of looked at my songs that way too, which is, okay, I have a germ of an idea, but I could hash it out and get the song finished. But I've actually found as often as when I let go, I feel like, I come to the songs at the right time, So that's sort of what I'm experimenting. Maybe I'll look up in 5 years and say, damn, I need to get back to writing every day. But for right now, I'm trying to be a little more kumbaya about it.
You've just indirectly reminded me that I still have to finish Aldous Huxley's Brave New World.
Oh, okay.
It's still sitting on my bookshelf, and damn it, I got like 70 pages left in it. I've never finished that book. Do you have a book? Is there a book that's on your shelf that you still have?
There certainly have been some. I'm trying to think of any that sort of come to mind. I've been reading a lot of fiction recently. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, a lot of Chinese philosophy. Yeah, I mean, it's all the classics. I mean, I've always told people, if you ever want to buy cheap books, like pristine copies of the classics, just go to a used bookstore, because they're filled with books that people are always intending to read and never do. They always eventually sell them back.
Smart.
So if you ever want to read the classics, just go to a used bookstore, because you'll find unread copies of Charles Dickens and Don Quixote and War and Peace and all those things. So
there's a great used bookstore on the border of North Hollywood and Burbank called the Iliad.
I may have gone there actually. I think I went there when I was in town for the voice audition. I think I had a free day, and I think I may have gone there.
It's an amazing bookstore. Were there like 12 cats in there?
Yeah, and there was there was a bunch of different like pocket rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did buy something. Oh, actually, I bought I have a book that I go to all the time. It's called A Source Book in Chinese Philosophy. And it's a phenomenal collection. And I've always known that they've had one called A Source Book in Indian Philosophy. And at our used bookstore in Berkeley, Moe's, do you know Moe's Books?
I
It's on
don't.
Telegraph. Oh, it's literally like, to me, it's like the epitome of used bookstores. It's
Okay.
like 4 floors and it's got everything. And they have this Indian source book of Indian philosophy, but it's all marked in. So I would look at it and go, oh, I can't buy it. I want to find one. And literally I was there and I found like a gently used copy. And so I'm 92% sure I got it at the Iliad.
I was at the Iliad a few months back. My mom was in town, and she likes to go see cool places.
Mhm.
So she said, Michael, let's go check out this bookstore. And we walk in, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of books in this book place. And they have their rhyme or reason to where they are scheduled and
Right,
sorted.
right.
But
They know
I
where
don't
it is.
know. I
Right.
don't know where anything is.
Right.
The first place I stop, and it's like a random, like 12 rows into the store. I walk halfway down and I just look up at the shelf and I see a detective mystery novel by Kinky Friedman, who has become a friend of mine. He was
okay.
one of the original outlaw country singer-songwriters. It's, and it was just the weirdest thing. Like, this is serendipitous.
Yeah.
I looked up. The only book I laid eyes on was written by a friend of mine at a bookstore. There's 100,000 books. Why did I stop here? Why did I look here?
Dude, yeah, you're speaking my language right
There's
now.
magic in it.
That's yeah, I mean that's my that's when even when I say like I'm trying to give up to this idea of just sort of writing when the songs come to me is, I've been a adamant sort of skeptic and atheist my whole life. But I've just, especially in my adult life, I've just had experiences that I'm not making any sort of metaphysical claim about them. I'm not saying that, I just don't I have no other word for them than they're sort of spiritual, or numinous is a word I like to use a lot. Just I'm sort of inviting the numinous into my life a little bit more. And part of it is I had a similar experience. I mean, I was mentioning Chinese philosophy, and honestly, the name Heir Apparent sort of came to me at this time where I was sort of having these sort of spiritual, for lack of a better word. I really don't like that word, but I just don't have another one for it. Insights. And I really got into Chinese philosophy after stumbling on the I Ching at a bookstore. I remember just walking into a used bookstore and feeling called to be there for some reason. I saw this copy of the Odyssey, even though your bookstore is called the Iliad, but I saw a copy of the Odyssey in the window and it was just winking at me. And I go in and I grab it, and I'm looking around. I'm looking at the fiction. I've never been in this bookstore before, and I grab a couple other things. I think one of them was like Double Earners by Joyce, and then I just have this moment where I was like, "This is not what I'm here for," and I put everything back. And I've never done this before. But I literally just sort of stood there with my eyes closed and just sort of thought. I just spoke to inside myself, to the cosmos, whatever. I just said, as earnestly as I possibly could, I just said, whatever I'm here for, whatever I'm here to see, show it to me. And I just started walking through the bookstore, and I end up like, as I'm walking, I'm seeing all these books just sort of wink at me from like my past. Like I was really into Shakespeare. I walked by the whole Shakespeare section, and I see this big tome about Macbeth, which is like my favorite play, like winking at me. And I pass through the drama section, and I see all these books, and I just turn this corner past like these French books. There's no reason to go up there. And I get to the top of the staircase and I just see this yellow spine. It's the first thing I lay my eyes on. And it's just, I knew the minute I looked at it, I didn't even know what it was. I said, that's what I'm here for. And I go and I pick it and I see it's the I Ching, which I knew what it was. It's an ancient book of Chinese philosophy and divination or whatever. I didn't really know what it was, but I had heard of it. But I pull it out and I just open up to the first hexagram and I read. And it was like fireworks going off in my brain. It was the spookiest thing that's ever happened to me because it's all metaphor, and it's like tarot. It's this sort of spiritual or allegory for like the spiritual journey or whatever it is. But as someone who's spent a lot of time just sort of academically studying religions or thinking about religion, it's never touched me. It's never moved me. But I remember reading this, and I felt like it was like finding myself. I was like, whatever this allegory, this story is like dynamically like lightning bolts in my brain, like speaking to me. And it's like finding that book, I knew that like I was like, this is what I'm here for. And I remember like taking it home, like my life was like the never ending story. Like, when Bastian like steals the book from the bookstore and runs home and starts his adventure. It was like that. I knew I was entering like a different chapter of my life. And when I talk about it, I feel like a total madman. But if I'm just being like as empirically honest about what I experienced and the influence it's had on my life, I mean, that's what it is. And I don't know if that's spiritual. I'm not saying there's a higher power that condones it. I just think it's just information like anything else, and I'm trying to like incorporate it into my life as sort of honestly as I can. So
For those of us who are unaware, can you sum up Chinese philosophy in 20
no,
seconds?
not all of it, but I can say, you know, the I Ching anyway is sort of comes from ancient sort of divination. You know, like there's like, you know, people roll bones or they roll coins or
Sure.
any sort of, there's a word for it, not cleromancy, but something. But it's just a way to sort of divine the future, right? Like in Greek, they had sibyls and things that would sort of interact with the spirits. And the I Ching is basically these 64 images that are supposed to encompass all situations, kind of like tarot cards. Like,
Okay.
So any sequence of tarot cards is meant to be able to represent any scenario you might find yourself in at any time. And the I Ching is a book of divination that's meant to sort of discern your place in the changes of the cosmos and not only where you are, but how you should respond in order to live the proper way or to propagate what they call the Tao or the way as honestly as possible. And the Tao is just this abstract way of describing like whatever the active force is behind the universe, that sort of numinous quality in life that I think it's important to pay respect to without sort of calling it, looking at any one religious text and saying like, oh, that's the story of how it happened, pretending to know more than you do. And Chinese philosophy for me, Taoism, the way they talk about the Tao or the way or yin yang, are really the only concrete ways to talk about these otherwise really abstract things and to try to talk about them intellectually, honestly, you know, without making any sort of real metaphysical claims about the world. Just saying, don't you feel like there's this thing and that when we're in touch with it, our life seems to interact a certain way? Like when we give sort of credence to those experiences where like we seem to find the right book at the right time, doesn't it feel like we're on our journey a little bit more? Like, don't we feel there's something in the universe sort of pushing us in a certain direction? And when we listen to it, we actually feel closer to our real selves. And when we're sort of busy with the worldly things that we think we're supposed to be doing, we somehow feel more detached from ourselves. That's what I feel like Chinese philosophy is about, is, you know, using language because it's all we have to talk about these sort of ephemeral things. And even like if you read the Tao Te Ching, which is like the book of Taoism, it says, you know, the way that can be named is not the way. Like once we give it a name, we're actually not talking about it anymore. But it's the only tool we have to talk about this thing that is just beyond our thinking, you know? Right above our, you know, when we think about our own death or when we think about infinity, like our brain, we literally feel our brain break at a certain point. Like I literally can't think past that. That's the veil of beyond that is the Tao. And it's not just a God of the gaps, you know, oh, I don't know, so I'm going to call it God. It's that something else, that thing that we sort of don't know what it is, and we'll sort of probe it as much as we can, but otherwise we'll just sort of try to use our own language to describe what this force, for lack of a better word, is.
All right, well, let's embrace this moment of Zen with another song. The Heir Apparent is our guest. You are front of house.
Button up, batten down. Gotta brace for what's before me. Gotta do what's always scared me after death. I'm pushing off, setting out. Gotta make my way exploring. See the forest or the trees that I've climbed. So long. Tell me if there's something to know, because I can't hold on to nothing. Tell her I'm sorry I left when I did, but I felt the earth crumbling as you started to slip in and I knew I would leave her. Cutting off, blacking out. Gotta break these bonds and leave them for a while. I'm smoking up, passing out, find away my feelings for me. Gotta be this kind of creature for a while. So long, tell me if there's something to know, because I can't hold on to nothing, to nothing. Tell her I'm sorry I left when I did, but I felt the earth crumbling as she started to slip, and I knew I would leave her. Tell her I'm sorry I left when I did, but I felt the earth crumbling as she started to slip, and so long, so long, so long. I wanna race out in the morning. I wanna see my future form. I wanna see you at a distance from the top.
That's straddling the line, walking the tightrope between a love song and a breakup song.
It's exactly that. It's a goodbye song. I think it's, and I played it just now. I mean, it's, it's, I talk about this whole something on the I Ching. It came right at the end of a relationship, and it was somebody that I was really connected with and somebody I really liked, but I could just tell that they were in one part of their life and I needed to be in another. And it wasn't like there was anything going wrong. I just knew that I needed to be somewhere else and it wasn't going to happen. And I needed to, I just talked about it, like I needed to make room in my life for the next best thing. And I knew it's just not going to come if I have this person in my life. And I didn't know what I had to do. I didn't know what growing I had to do, but I've just always felt the need to grow and the need to sort of like advance, and, that life was like a journey inward, and I had to sort of mine deeper into myself. And sometimes you're with people who are just sort of fine with you being where you're at because it kind of makes them more comfortable with they're at, But it's kind of like running a race, where you're like, I got more miles than me. Is someone saying, let's stop here, and you say, I got to see what I'm made of, I want to keep running, And so a lot
I
of
like
those,
that analogy.
yeah. Well, I mean that song literally comes out of, and I talk about the I Ching and I talk about the never-ending story because. I think these children's stories are really,
Betray you.
dude, these are like deep, and even children's stories, folk tales, these are deep allegories for deep parts of our psyche, and that when we read them as adults, we're like, oh, this is really profound. And that song literally comes from like the beginning of the hero's journey. Like, Atreyu is in the swamps of sadness with this horse Artek, and his horse starts to sink, and he's like, why are you stopping? We need to keep going. And the horse is just sinking, and he's lost his friend, he's lost his companion, but he doesn't see it yet, but he has a whole journey ahead of him, And so that song for me, and the video that I made for it, is sort of a whole tribute to the never-ending story, and that scene in particular, which is sometimes you're looking at someone who's content to be where they're at, and it's not a judgment, but you just know that you have further to go.
Oh.
And that whole song is, I'm cutting off, I'm setting out, I gotta face my fears alone, he can't have his friend with him for the thing. Like, I don't know what's out there, but there's something I have to face, and I'm sorry to say goodbye, but I have to. And that lyric where it says, tell her I'm sorry I left when I did, but I felt the earth crumbling and she started to slip. And then I knew I would leave her. That sadness of, I see you slipping, but I know I'm going to let go, but I need to do it for myself. That's sort of where that song came from for me.
That gives me chills, man. Our guest is the Heir Apparent. You can find him across social media. Remember that Heir is spelled H-E-I-R. And he is our guest today, front of house in the North Hollywood hideout in Los Angeles, California. We got time for one more song, my brother. Bring us home.
All right. There's a song called The Fall of Rome. Smoke it if you got some, get 'em while the getting is good. Show your claws, you need 'em 'cause you feel misunderstood. So your heart is beating, it's bleeding, that's good. No one cares, why would they? Don't for theirs. Upset with the outcome, nothing works whatever you give. Show them all, keep holding on and screaming to the wind. It's only a defeat that you meet in the end. No one cares, no one cares. Every song I've learned to sing's already old. Time turned out the reasons into dust. What's forever in the morning is not together in the gloam. Tell me I'm not living in the fall of Rome. Shake it where you got one, use it 'cause you're losing it fast. On and on it's going, gone, it fades into the past. No one knows your history, your meaning is lost. No one cares, every song I've learned to sing's already old. Time turned all the reasons into dust. What's forever in the morning is not together in the gloam. Tell me I'm not living in the fall of Rome. Did I fall? And the weeks slipped away. Hey, so the cowards run their last in the flood. Oh, won't you please come pinch me away? Tell me I'm not living in. Tell me I'm not living in. Tell me I'm not living in. What's forever in the morning is not together when you want. Tell me I'm not living in the what? Tell me I'm not living in the fall of Rome.
The artist is the Heir Apparent, and he was our guest this time around on Front of House. Look him up online at thisismxoxo.com. This is mxoxo.com. And again, he's releasing a new song every single month, so check in at thisismxoxo every month and get a new song from the dude. Before we get out of here, it's time for a Front of House flashback. On February 7th of 2014, Phil Levitt and Joey Callio, members of the band Seven Horse, joined me in the studio at the Burbank Bungalow. A year and a half prior, they had just had their song Meth Lab Zoso sticker plucked out of oblivion by Martin Scorsese and thrown into the movie The Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio. Well, the boys from Seven Horse have a new album out called Superfecta. I recommend you check it out at the number 7horsemusic.com, 7horsemusic.com. As you rewatch The Wolf of Wall Street, check out the pivotal scene that Scorsese put this song in. But this is live, one of a kind, 7 Horse, front of house.
Finger, don't know how to stop it. Got a one-way pile driver, nowhere left to use it. Supercharged freedom fighter, and I'm giving it all. I got a candy stick peacemaker, know you wanna shoot it. A 3D dream maker, gotta find some place to put it. Got a left lab social sticker, roll up in my pocket. Genuine mother maker, and I'm giving it all. I'll get it up. Get it up now. Hey. I got a man's slab, such a sticker rolled up in my pocket. 7-inch trigger finger, don't know how to stop it. Got a one-way pile driver, nowhere left to use. Supercharged freedom fighter, and I'm giving it all. I'll get it up. I'll get it up now. Hey. Sticker rolled up in my pocket. A 7-inch trigger finger, don't know how to stop it. A one-way pile driver, nowhere left to use it. I'm a supercharged freedom fighter, and I'm giving it all to you. Yeah. Giving it all to you. Giving it all to you now. Yeah. She said, get it up all night. Get it up all right.
Seven Horse, Meth Lab Zoso sticker, live in Los Angeles. Again, thanks to Joey and Phil from 7 Horse for being a guest on Front of House. Check them out at the number 7 Horse Music, 7horsemusic.com. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of Front of House. Our guest next week, the guy who on this latest tour played bass for one of the greatest bass players of all time, which is high, high praise. I'm talking about Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. No, we won't have Duff in the studio, but we will have his bass player, Ted Russell Camp, who also plays bass for Shooter Jennings and has a ton of his own music. We'll go through Ted's latest records, sit down, and hear some great music on both bass and guitar. Next week, again, please become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/front of house. Follow us at FOH Pod. And we'll be back on the next Music Monday. Live in Los Angeles, California, this is Front of House.